Is it more important to have firm, strong beliefs, or is it more important to have an open mind so there's room for growth? But how then do we do that without losing who we are and moving away from our own truth? This is what I was confronted with earlier this year when I was traveling in India. A situation that really had me thinking and questioning and asking myself, what is true to me? This is what I share with you in today's episode. Welcome to Higher Self Mastery, the podcast for women ready to leave behind who they were told to be and remember who they truly are. I'm your host, Dami Schumacher. This is your space to come home to yourself, to honor the inner pull for more truth and more depth, and more meaning as you enter a new chapter of your life. Together, we're reframing midlife crisis into the midlife magic that it actually is, because this is your rebirth. Through soulful conversations and spiritual tools, you'll reconnect to your truth and reclaim your voice and live the life that your soul came here for. So let's begin. Something happened earlier this year when I was traveling in India with my parents visiting families that really got me thinking and tested my belief systems and how I decide upon what I believe and what I don't believe. And it put me in a really interesting position, and I am so grateful for the challenge to be reminded of how to check in and what really is important in these situations. And I absolutely will tell you what happened in just a moment. But what I found myself really mulling over was this paradox between having a strong belief system so that you can feel safe, secure, and know yourself and know how you want to move forward in certain areas of your life upon that belief system and making decisions upon that with assurance and self-confidence, as opposed to being open and not having firm, decided beliefs so that you can remain open to new perspectives and different ways of thinking. And really, that's where the growth lies, right? And it's this balance between knowing yourself so that you don't get pushed about in the turbulence or the wind like a feather would, and being able to be rooted strong like a tree, yet at the same time being open as well and so that you can have your cup poured into with new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of seeing, and the ability to then adapt and change what you currently believe and how you currently move through life into new ways of being, so that you can be more expansive, so that you can essentially ascend on this path of spiritual ascension. And what actually happened was we had only just landed. It had literally been like a day or 2 days, and my daughter fell a little unwell. Initially, didn't really think anything of it. She had a bit of a temperature, sort of like flu-like symptoms, quite lethargic in her body, didn't have the energy to do very much, just wanted to be in bed. Flu-like symptoms, as I said, nothing that raised any alarm bells in me. It was unexpected on the one hand, because she seemed well enough in herself prior to her falling unwell. But at the same time as well, there was a whole run of events that very logically explains why she may have felt run down and why her immune system may have been low, and then she wasn't feeling 100%. But what happened? So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the culture in India, um, most parts of India, I think it's fair to say, although of course there are pockets that vary in different places and from faith to culture to society and all of those kind of things, there are always nuances and differences. But as a whole, it is quite a superstitious culture. And the superstition is not just associated to the culture, it is also part of the religion as well. So that's where it becomes quite embedded and quite strong. And so I come from a Hindu background, and there are certain things that there are many different arms of Hinduism. It's one of the oldest religions, and so it's sort of grown into all these different areas and different ways of worship. And growing up, my parents, the type of Hinduism that they've always followed, they are quite firm in their beliefs that they don't subscribe to these cultural superstitions, right? So, for the most part, I have, even though I was raised as a Hindu, I was it was absent from my upbringing. It's not a way of thinking that was common within my household. But that said, I still saw it within our community. I still saw it amongst some relatives and that sort of thing. Now, understandably as well, when a culture, a group of people migrate from a country to another country, this can also change and dilute as well. So, yes, it does exist here in the UK, but there's a whole other level of belief that exists in the motherland, which I didn't experience until this trip earlier this year. So my ancestral heritage is from Gujarat in northwest of India. And we were staying with family, and when my daughter fell unwell, I started to hear it in conversations amongst my cousin's wife and then my auntie, and just sort of like being thrown around, and then like with my mom. And essentially what they were saying was that someone had intentionally or unintentionally, now this is a whole other subject in itself, casted some black magic on my daughter. And it's called the evil eye. You may have heard of this. It's also very common in other cultures as well, like in the Middle East. And, you know, you've got the evil eye symbol, which helps to ward off the evil eye. I think that's from like Turkey, those parts of the world. And then, you know, it's prevalent in different cultures, right? And so this is where I got caught, because although I have a good understanding of how energy works from a physics perspective, quantum physics, how everything is subatomic particles, they vibrate, the magnetism, the law of attraction, law of vibration, law of circulation, all these things. It's very easy to understand from that scientific perspective. At the same time, I have a very open mind to everything that cannot be explained by science, because I'm a firm believer, and this is one of my very, very firm, strong beliefs, is that science hasn't figured everything out that truly exists. And just because it hasn't been proven doesn't mean it's not true. So I have this very open mind to the mystical, the magical, the old, ancient teachings and ways of being and living from cultures that no longer exist, and all of those kind of things, because I do believe that there can be some truth in what was once said, just because the science that we know today didn't exist then necessarily, or it wasn't recorded to our awareness. So I am really open to these things as well. And when it comes to black magic, I have to admit, I can't say I fully understand it enough yet to really know where I sit with it in terms of my belief. And I've always sat on the fence. There's one part of me that says, I can see how that works, because even from a scientific perspective, it's energy. If somebody's looking at you with such malintent, and their energy is so focused and really strong, and whatever it is in their alignment, that they are able to almost cast that spell on you, that force of energy which is being directed, pinpointed at the other individual. Yes, even from a scientific perspective, I can see how that energy can then become attached to someone, or can become a magnet to that person then as well. If that person hasn't got protection, or if that person hasn't got their boundaries, etc., etc., etc. And this is where I'm really stepping into unfamiliar territory here, because this is not my area of expertise. As I said, I do sit on the fence with this. I'm not quite sure of my beliefs around this. So on the one hand, I can understand how that is something that happens. Yet then on the other side, I also have this belief where sometimes it can be taken a little too far, in the sense that not everything is about that. Sometimes it is just biology. Sometimes it is just physical. And maybe that belief is the incorrect belief. I'm not sure. But the conversation that I started to hear, so it began with like little rituals, right? Little protective rituals that I've seen time and time again. I used to have them done on me when I was little, sometimes by my mom, even though she didn't fully subscribe to the beliefs. Again, she did it out of the same reasons that I bought into it. And you'll hear in a minute why. And that ultimately was fear for your child. But they began to like do all these little rituals on my daughter at night before she ate or after she ate, with like seeds and lentils, and would say little prayers and da 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 da. To the untrained eye, or to someone who doesn't understand what's going on, it just looked like dogmatic ritual, right? But I know that each little component had its purpose and played a part. And then this sort of, these seeds or these lentils or something would be cast away. So almost like casting a protective spell over her, and or also removing any of the negative energy that may have attached itself to her aura, and cleansing that aura and removing it from her as well. And when I say it like that, I'm like, yeah, that I can totally see how that could have happened. But initially, when they mentioned it, I remember my reaction was like, oh, okay, and sort of like smirked a little bit, which, you know, I'm not proud of, but I did, because I've just grown up with it, and it was just like everything always resorted to some kind of black magic, in, you know, ill intent sort of thing. And I was just like, oh, okay, fine. And I just humored it. I was just like, just let them do it. You know, I said to my daughter, just let them do it. What harm can it cause? Just let them do it. It makes them feel better as well. They feel like they are doing something to help. It's not going to hurt you. Just let them get on with it. But then it carried on. And then the conversations increased. And then everyone was talking about it. And then my mum's like fully engaged. And that's when it really caught my attention, I think, because my mum's usually quite good. Like, she might do it a little bit. She might do a little bit and then put it to one side. But I can see how her reasons were the same as what my reasons will have been as well. And that was, we were away from home. Yes, with family, but away from our own home. So therefore not feeling as safe as we normally would, in a unfamiliar environment, in a different country, amongst a different culture, a different group of people. And there was this big question mark of, what if it is that? what if it is? And if it is, then we need to do everything we can to protect her and help her. And I caught myself buying into this story. I caught myself believing and sharing their beliefs around what was happening. And there was fear in me. There was fear in me, like, what if something has happened? Because I've heard, again, in my culture, through family, I've heard some pretty horrendous stories of black magic, because supposedly when it is really strong, it's almost sometimes can be really difficult to reverse as well. And the effects can be lifelong. And I have seen people just change, right? And again, could be a whole bunch of reasons why that has happened. But that fear got instilled in me, and I was like, what if it is? What if something has happened? And at this point, she was at the height of her fever and the height of her sickness and lying in bed. And yes, that is quite out of character for her. She rarely gets sick. And even when she's unwell, like, she's hardly ever bedridden, right? So I started to feel quite fearful and powerless. And so I just allowed my aunties and my sister-in-law to just like get on with things and like help in whatever way they could. And then I was talking to my husband about it on the phone, who was here in the UK back at home and who doesn't subscribe to any of this. And again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but he doesn't subscribe to any of these beliefs. And it's something he said that snapped me out of it. It was that outside perspective that broke. It was that pattern interrupt amongst what was like I was cocooned in this belief system, a belief that everyone around me bought into. And he said something, I can't remember the exact words, and it just made me think. I was like, it was actually something I said to him, but it was in the conversation with him. And it was something along the lines of, if this was happening at home, I wouldn't be worried at all. I'm pretty sure it's just exhaustion. I said, she's hardly slept before leaving because of the excitement and all the packing. And then it's been pretty much like 24 hours of traveling with little to no sleep. And what sleep she did get was, uncomfortable on the plane or in a car. Like, it's just been tiring. So of course she's a little unwell. That's normal. It's just catching up on her. Like, the exhaustion's just catching up on her. Her body's just shutting down because she's been running on adrenaline, and now it just needs the rest to recuperate. And I said something along those lines, and the words came out of my own mouth. But it was in that conversation that I realized, I was like, so if I was at home, then this would just be a mild illness, which I would not be worried about in the slightest. Just let her have the rest, and in a few days' time, expect her to be back up on her feet. And that would be it. That would be the end of the thought and the conversation. But because I'm not at home and I'm here in a different environment, not in my own home, so I don't feel as safe, even though I felt as safe as I could in a foreign country because I was surrounded by people that love and protect us. And in amongst a culture that has a very, very different belief system, a very strong belief system about why this is happening to her, I've just bought into their story. I've bought into their belief system. But actually, it's not my belief at all. And that was when the penny dropped and I kind of came out of it and sort of snapped out of that almost trance-like state that I felt like I got absorbed into. And it really got me thinking from a bigger perspective. It's like, how often do we do that? That was a really, really good example and a really good test and a reminder to me. And I want this to be a reminder to all of you. How often do we do that when we don't have strong beliefs of our own around something, where we then adopt other people's beliefs out of fear, but they're not ours and we don't actually subscribe to them, but we attach to ourselves to them, or we end up borrowing them. And by doing so, you're really going against what is true to you, to who you really are. And that also got me thinking, but then if I was so rigid in my beliefs, I would never grow. This path of spiritual ascension, this path of personal development, in order to continue walking on that path and to continue climbing that ladder, I have to have beliefs that are open, that are not rigid, that are not set in stone, because I have to forever remain the student. I can't always feel like I know everything, and I know I don't know everything. How would I then learn to be open to different perspectives, different viewpoints, and open to tweak how I go about life, tweak how I see things and do things, actually grow and develop and become the version of myself that I desire to be more flexible in being able to stand in other people's shoes and see things from their perspective if I have such rigid beliefs. But then at the same time, if I don't have these rigid beliefs, I'm in danger of just being blown around and getting caught up in everybody else's turbulence. And I just found that really, really interesting. I was just like, okay. It's a beautiful paradox. Because when it comes to our belief systems, we need to be both. We need to be sure sometimes in what we believe in, what is true to us. Yet at the same time, simultaneously, we also need to remain open as well, so that we have the room to grow and change and adapt and flow. So how do you know? And what it came down to for me, and this is where the discernment I think is really important, is that it was how it felt in my body. When I bought into the belief systems that this is black magic and whatever it was, my auntie and my sister-in-law and everybody else around us was believing at the time, I bought into it from a place of fear. And I can see why it happened so easily, because of the lack of safety that I would normally have in my own home. And because it was all around us as well. So there's just almost being outnumbered in the belief as well. But ultimately, it was fear. I was fearful for my daughter. And I didn't want to go against something that could possibly be helpful and then be the person who is the irresponsible mother, or the mother who then prevented their child from healing. And something worse, for it to escalate to something much worse. But it was from fear. That's why I went along. That's why I bought into it for the short time that I did. But once I noticed that and came into my body and noticed that, oh my gosh, this is such a contractive feeling. Like I'm doing this and I'm going along with it because I'm scared. This closing feeling in my body. That's kind of when I woke up and I was like, we don't do things from that place. Fear only has a place when it's a matter of survival. And this kind of felt like it could be. But that was a game, an intellectual game that my mind was playing with me. There was not any actual real facts or evidence of immediate, imminent danger to her life or my life. So therefore, that fear was irrational. It was based on what ifs. It was based on what other people believed, potential outcomes, imagination running wild. And it was like, no, 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 no. We don't do things from that place. And when I really came back into myself and landed in my heart, like, what do I really believe? How do I really feel about this? And I'm like, she's okay. She just needs to rest. It's like, okay, that doesn't mean I'm not open to the idea of black magic and how that potentially could infiltrate our lives from time to time. And I still very much sit on the fence about that. But in that moment, what clarity I was able to come to was from how it felt in my body. It wasn't this expansive feeling. Whereas if it's an openness, not holding on to a belief system rigidly, but then it's a beautiful, expansive feeling because it feels like, I'm staying open. I'm listening. I'm listening to what somebody has to say. I'm listening to their perspective. I'm listening to a different way of potentially moving through life. And yeah, that's really interesting. I might try that on for size. And it just feels like this, yeah, that feels like a bigger version of me. That feels like a more expanded version of me. That's your sign that that's something worth exploring in the direction to move into. So this conversation, really, I'm just bringing to you from this experience that I had, and it was this one little experience I had, but it's stayed with me since, and it's something that I just felt like was really important to just share with all of you, because for not that you're all out there having these experiences specifically in this context with black magic, not at all. That was just my example. But we are challenged every single day, all the time, on our beliefs, whether we realize it or not. Sometimes we probably don't notice because it is absolute. We're like, no, that's what I think, or that's what I believe. Or sometimes we are just so open to it. We're like, yeah, okay, cool, let's try that. But when it's something that's where you're sitting on the fence a little bit and it's a little bit more conflicting, that might be when we notice it. When it doesn't feel quite right, or you're just going along because you're amongst a certain group of people and you go along because they all believe in something, but it doesn't quite sit well with you, but you go along anyway, and you're just like, why do I feel off? Just check in with yourself. Because this isn't, what I think I realize out of this experience is that the work isn't to become more certain, but more familiar with what truth feels like in your own body. It's about being genuinely open-minded and allowing yourself to evolve and grow, but not being so open that you lose who you really are and just float away with everybody else's ideas and move continuously. This is about having those roots deep in the ground. This is the importance of knowing what matters to you, what your core values are, what's important to you in this season of your life, and then swaying like a willow tree and allowing yourself to have that movement and that freedom to flow a little bit, but without losing who you really are. And I think if I wasn't the person that I am today, so strong and rooted at the core of who I am, I could easily have, that whole experience could have unfolded in such a different way. In fear, no doubt. And who knows what the outcome would have been of that. What kind of, sure, my daughter may still have recovered and got better, but I may have fully bought into that. And then the fear, next time something happens, something's happened to her again, someone's done something to her again. or to me, or to my husband, or to somebody else that I love? What kind of narrative would that have instilled in me, where I'm giving my power away all the time to somebody else in that example? So I invite you to just next time notice when you are making those decisions, those choices around things that you believe. And we're tested on this all the time because everything's about your belief. But the next time you notice where you're perhaps being challenged on your belief, or when sometimes it doesn't feel quite right in you, sit with it. What's your truth, not somebody else's? And have the courage to follow what's right for you. That expansive feeling. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that has served you well and you found it of interest. I'll see you again next week. Bye. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Higher Self Mastery. If something landed, moved you, or sparked a shift, I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and share this episode with a woman in your life that is also ready to rise. And if you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast, especially in these early days. It really helps others to find this work too. If you're craving deeper support and sisterhood, join my mailing list using the link below, where you'll be the first to receive free meditations, learn about up-and-coming retreats, and other ways that we can work together. Until next time, honor your truth and trust in the timing of your becoming.